During a routine search for a missing hydrogen bomb off the coast of Spain, the technicians aboard the USS Hoist detect a foreign sonar and realize a Soviet submarine is approaching.
Submarine bearing a 209er at 16 knots and headed directly for your position.
The diver, deep inside the sea, hears the warning from his fellow officers and tries to evade it and see to safety as soon as possible. One morning in 1943, in Sonora, Kentucky, a young boy named Carl Brashear is awakened by his mother to prepare and leave for school. Carl wakes up, and as he starts preparing, he sees his sharecropper father struggling to plow, alone on the farm, and runs to his aid. From that day onwards, even though he's just a young boy, Carl decides to help his father with farming and drops out of school in the 7th grade. A decade later, Carl is recruited by the Navy recruiter and prepares to ship out. Carl bids a tearful farewell to his mother, while his father imparts encouraging words of wisdom, never to give up and fight for what he wants. Carl promises to make his father proud and leaves. Carl becomes a crew member of the USS Hoist salvage ship on the South Pacific, but is only kept to kitchen duties with his fellow colored officers. One day, as the white crew members practice swimming, Carl boldly jumps in between them. Despite the laws being broken, the captain, Captain Pullman, is impressed by Carl's skills and transfers him to the search and rescue team, which delights the young man. One day, as a mail chopper approaches the USS Hoist, it malfunctions and goes down into the ocean. After rescuing the pilot, as the crew members watch in awe, Master Chief Petty Officer Leslie William Billy Sunday of the USS Hoist heroically dives back into the water without proper gear to rescue his partner, who gets knocked overboard without an airline. As a result, Master Chief Sunday develops an air embolism, which prevents him from ever diving again. Frustrated, Master Chief Sunday lashes out at the doctors and the staff. The Master Chief is medically disqualified from diving, and as a disciplinary measure, he is reassigned to a training position so that he can learn respect for authorities. In the Navy, Carl becomes boatswain's mate, 2nd class, declares to Captain Pullman that he wants to become a master diver someday, and asks him to endorse his wish as the training facilities are biased against colored people. After writing hundreds of letters and patiently waiting for 2 years, boatswain's mate 2nd class Carl is accepted as the first colored trainee at the U.S. Navy Dive and Salvage School in New Jersey, where Master Chief Sunday instructs. However, when he arrives there, he is not permitted to enter and waits all day standing by the door, enviously watching all the white officers come and go as they please. Having seen his patience and determination, Master Chief Sunday finally allows him to enter the premises by the end of the day. There, he meets a mild-mannered officer with a stutter named Snowhill, who shows him around and tells him about the scary and bigoted commanding officer of the facility, named Mr. Pappy. That night, Carl faces some resistance in the sleeping barracks, led by Officer Dylan Rourke.
No disrespect to the president, but I don't bunk with niggas.
In the wee hours of the night, Master Chief Sunday pours a bucket of water on Carl and wakes him up for training. He then takes Carl outside and sprays him with water while questioning him about the different physics laws of pressure and volume that are essential to diving. Carl doesn't know the answers to any of the questions, but vows to himself that he will be prepared next time. A few days later, the officers start their diving training under the Master Chief, who devises different methods to test their determination and courage. The Master Chief then targets Snowhill for being nice to Carl, gives him an impossible test, and throws him out of diving school, despite fierce resistance from Carl. The physical training continues, and the officers start mastering different skills. However, Carl's lack of proper education starts to weigh him down, and he fails multiple written exams. One day, a senior officer reminds Carl that he only has one last chance to pass a test, and advises him to look outside of the facility for proper training. A few weeks later, on their weekend break, the officers go into town to enjoy themselves. Carl goes to the local public library to study and meets a medical student named Joe, who is reluctant to help him prepare for his exams. Carl proves his determination and passion to her, and the two start studying together. Carl starts mastering the physics laws of diving by heart. On the next exam, Carl's hard work pays off, and he passes the exam comfortably. A few days later, during training, Officer Dylan and Officer Isert partner up and dive into the salvage equipment from the sea floor. However, Esert's gear malfunctions, and chaos ensues as the trainee has a difficult time breathing. The Master Chief guides Dylan to help Esert and sending Carl in with them. However, Dylan freaks out when the rescuing becomes difficult and abandons his partner. The Master Chief is extremely disappointed with Officer Dylan, but at Mr. Pappy's instruction, gives him Carl's credit for the brave rescue and gives him a medal. A couple of days later, Carl is devastated to hear that his father has passed away. Then, as he tries to call Joe, he runs into Master Chief Sunday's wife, Gwen, who complains about her husband and takes him inside the white bar. The officers are not happy to see Carl there and try to throw him out, but instead, the Master Chief challenges him to a competition to see who can hold their breath the longest. Carl takes the Master Chief on and begs him to let Snow Hill back in diving school if he wins, while the Master Chief asks Carl to leave the school that night if he loses. The competition begins and the two don their diving gear. Joe, who is watching all of this, realizes that she can't handle being a part of Carl's life, tells him that she has passed her finals and that she will be too busy with her new job, and leaves him while he tells her he loves her and asks her to marry him. One evening, Mr. Pappy calls Master Chief Sunday into his office and orders him to fail Carl on his final practical exam, despite his high scores on the written exam. Later, the Master Chief approaches Carl to tell him what's going on and tells him to miss the exam, as they won't let him pass anyway. The next morning, Carl shows up for the exam, which requires the trainees to assemble a flange underwater using a bag full of tools. Under Pappy's direction, Carl's tool bag is cut open, with his tools falling out all over the sea floor to impede his passing. 9.5 freezing hours later, long after his fellow officers have completed the exam, Carl finishes the assembly and is helped by his fellow officers under the Master Chief's order. Master Chief Sunday passes Carl to graduate and is immediately stripped of his position and demoted to Senior Chief by Mr. Pappy. In the coming few months, out of frustration, Senior Chief Sunday gets into fights with his senior officers and is further demoted to Chief Petty Officer. Meanwhile, Carl marries Joe and has a son. In 1966, Carl goes aboard a USS Hoist and dives off the coast of Spain to retrieve a missing hydrogen bomb. The dive turns extremely dangerous as a Russian submarine intercepts Carl, who barely survives. Fortunately, right after the scary encounter, Carl becomes a national hero as he locates the bomb. However, after Carl goes aboard the ship, the crew members struggle to pull up the bomb. Carl is admitted to a hospital as he has sustained a severe injury to his leg and is devastated to learn that his diving career is over. However, his hero status is cemented for saving the crew members and is awarded a medal and the title of Chief. Elsewhere, Chief Petty Officer Sunday is admitted to a rehab facility as his frustration has led him to become a verbally abusive drunk with many misdemeanors. One day, Chief Carl informs his superior officers that he has decided to sever his injured leg from the knee down and return to active duty with prosthetics so that he can make Master Chief like he always dreamed of. This decision becomes too much for Joe, and after unsuccessfully begging him to change his mind, she leaves him. After cleaning up his act and being assigned to a small diving school, Chief Petty Officer Sunday comes to visit Chief Carl and informs him that the hierarchy plans to retire him, despite promising to give him time to train with his prosthetic leg. The two old colleagues discuss and formulate a plan to bypass all the bureaucracy and go to the head of the Navy personnel in Washington to present their case. Meanwhile, Chief Carl transfers out of the hospital, and his immediate officers, including Captain Hank, start looking into his whereabouts. Chief Petty Officer Sunday approaches Captain Hank, and using the threat of leaking stories of mistreating a national hero to the media, convinces him to grant Chief Carl a hearing with the senior officers in Washington in a month to demonstrate his ability to return to active duty, while promising to retire if he doesn't help Chief Carl return to his best and pass the test. After 4 weeks of grueling training, the time comes to appear in court in front of Captain Hank and multiple senior officers from Washington. Chief Petty Officer Sunday escorts Chief Carl to the completely filled courtroom and waits outside. Joe and Chief Carl's son come to support him through the test, which motivates and warms the courageous soldier. Captain Hank asks Chief Carl many unfair questions, but Chief Carl politely makes light of the situation and eases his way past them. However, at last, Captain Hank brings the new diving gear, which weighs 290 pounds, and asks Chief Carl to put it on and walk 12 steps, as it is mandated in the new guidebook. Unable to wait any longer, Chief Petty Officer Sunday enters the courtroom to the dismay of Captain Hank, who tries to throw him back out. However, one of the admirals remembers Chief Petty Officer Sunday and all his heroics from back in the day, and allows him to stay. The demonstration begins, and Chief Carl puts on the new diving gear, while Chief Petty Officer Sunday prepares to lead him through it. As soon as all the procedures are taken care of, Chief Petty Officer Sunday orders the tenders to help Chief Carl to his feet, but Captain Hank stops them, citing that the new guidebook mandates the subject to get up from sitting position on their own. Chief Carl barely manages to get up, and Chief Petty Officer Sunday begins the countdown to 12 steps with encouragement.
Wear that rig and approach the rail.
As the courtroom erupts with cheers and applause, Captain Hank swallows his pride, and on behalf of the U.S. Navy, fully restores Chief Carl to active duty. Chief Carl reunites with Joe and his son, who warmly congratulate him. In 1968, Chief Carl became the first amputee in U.S. Navy history to return to full active duty. In 1970, he became the first African American to become a master diver. After serving his country for 9 more years and fulfilling his dreams, Master Diver Carl retired in 1979. The end. Don't forget to like this video and subscribe to our channel. Thanks for watching.